Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon again, folks. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC. Before that, the disclaimers. And yes, I'm mad at myself again because I forgot to hit the green button on the headphone set again. So I did another 30-minute video, 30 minutes of talking with no sound. So when I get to do the video again. I think I'm going to need to have a whole lot of chamomile and kava tea. Alright, we're gonna shoot through the disclaimers, the trigger warnings, jump into it. If you're unfamiliar with the Stop the Shocks campaign or the troubled teen industry going against that campaign, pertinent links are in there in the description box. Also, don't forget the article by Neuroclastic and their GoFundMe, because unlike the JRC, us PO advocates aren't made out of money or have access to unlimited resources and power. Alright, trigger warnings. 1 second, allergies. Okay, 1 moment here. There we go. And I almost muted myself again. Please send help. When we talk about places like the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center or Agape Boarding School for Boys, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips or surveillance footage of people with mental health issues and disabled people being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use the headphones. This channel is marked not for kids for a reason. We do use profanity. We speak on dark subjects. If your child's 16 and younger and watching, parental supervision is advised. We're going to be repeating a few things because we're going to go over that last sentence here. And as per usual, and we'll point out to you every elephant, giraffe, unicorn, hydra flying around breathing fire with 3 heads in the room that the JRC pretends to close their eyes and stuff their ears and stamp their feet like a toddler to not see, hear, or acknowledge exists. So, let's get to it. The last sentence, however, even though no other placement would accept EL, the district refused to send EL back to the JRC. First off, JRC seriously needs to stop with the martyr shit. Sincerely. They have this thing where they always think everything is about them. It's like dealing with a narcissistic asshole or bitch in stereo. In this situation, to remind you all, by the time this comment was written, EL was 55 years old. The JRC had kept him there way past the time he should have already been transitioned over to adult services. The way the service system works is there's transition steps throughout the entirety of the consumer's lifespan. Your services and supports, the people that you deal with, both direct care staff as well as experts in elementary school, are not going to be the same as the ones in middle school, not going to be the same as those in high school, not going to be the same ones that get you to the transition point, and then after that transition point are not going to be the same people taking you into adult services and elderly services, okay? As stated in the previous video, the general age range from when you should be transferring out of a school residential program like this is between 18 to 26 at the very oldest. Now, the cases where the kids are age 26 by the time they're fully transferred out into adult services is extremely rare. So, in regards to this, the District of Columbia is not picking on the poor, self-declared martyrs, the JRC. They're engaging in the regular order of things. This is routine. It's normal. It's how the service system works. Because as you age, the supports and services you need change. In areas where you might have needed some additional support or some extreme trauma-informed people to help you, later down the road you may not need that. Or as you get older in age, you change physically, right? So your supports may need to start being accommodating in regards to the physical things that come from age, as well as many other things that have to involve adult services, in which the JRC in no way, shape, form, or capacity is prepared to appropriately deal with. They can't even appropriately deal with the people, the kids that they're supposed to specialize in the first place. Keeping someone way past time, they should have been transitioned to adult services, at least out here. These are usually grounds for a firing. A very, very special level of firing. And there would be a whole lot of firing that would be going around in that situation. Okay? And the school residential program that hit that fact, you want to talk about penalties and the people in charge of trying to hide it. Those repercussions. It's not pretty, folks. It's not pretty at all. Okay? The JRC is not being, in any way, shape, or form, singled out or being treated unfairly. The reason why the District of Columbia refuses to send EL back to the JRC is because EL is already middle-aged. He has no business continuing to be inside a residential school program. Period. Period. Even under the best of circumstances. Like the place Rivendell out here I tell you all about so often, that I'm so proud of, and proud that I got to act as a consultant on when the idea first got passed around. Even with them, it's the exact same process. You hit a certain age range, you transition to those services that are best appropriate to your age. That's why the services you received in elementary school are not going to be appropriate when you're middle-aged, nor the ones in high school, middle school. Duh. That's how funding works. That's how the service system works. It's done in such an orderly and organized manner so we can make sure that the consumers are being taken care of at their stage of life with the appropriate supports. Okay? The people at the JRC do not specialize in middle-aged neurodivergent care services, either community-based or residential-wise, at all. The direct care staff are not trained for it. The case managers aren't. The teachers aren't. Literally no one. Now, let's talk about something else. And we kind of brought up this subject in the last video. Remember when we were comparing the abused neurotypical child and the fact that it is something with those who are within the mental health field where it is not uncommon that someone that has gone through trauma is going to manifest some very troubling self-destructive behaviors, both aggressive behavior and self-injurious behavior, yes? And we understand that this is something that all know not wonderful and is actually quite scary. It is a reaction to someone who's trying to come to grips with the trauma that they've been forced to suffer. Right? Now, in regards to those neurotypical kids, nobody is going to see those troubling behaviors start to crop up and think, well, these behaviors weren't as bad when they were with the abusive parent. Maybe I should send them back because these people aren't insane. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to us neurodivergent folks, we are not looked at with that same level of understanding. For reasons that I can't comprehend or understand. When it comes to behaviors, even when it's known we've gone through some horrifically traumatic shit, it's always assumed that whatever troubling, scary behavior that comes out of us, it's always the autism, the ADHD, it's the neurodivergent diagnoses' fault. Even if you have a dual diagnosis with a mental health issue. When we start also manifesting the very similar behaviors to the neurotypical kid who manifested their behavior in response to trauma, when they look at us, nobody ever takes the second to sit down and think, gee, maybe this is not due to the fact that Tiffany's autistic. Maybe it has to do with the fact that she has extreme anxiety disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder, and these behaviors is not from the autism. These behaviors are from someone trying to come to grips from having gone through extremely traumatic shit for a very long time. If it sounds like I'm frustrated, people, you have got no idea. Because even within the realm of mental health, when I say I get frustrated because I have to explain things to people who are supposed to be experts, that's why I'm frustrated. I've had this conversation more times than I care to count. It's this prevalent idea within the medical model that whatever is going on behavior-wise that scares the neurotypicals, that it's always the neurodivergent diagnoses fault. Even in the cases where they know that there has been things such as child abuse, torture, emotional and psychological abuse, and sexual assault. They can't seem to wrap their brains around the fact that even in the regards to say it's behaviors you already engaged in because you are neurodivergent, but you were able to mask a good majority of the time, so those behaviors became rare. But when you left the traumatic situation, those behaviors became more frequent and more intense. Do people ever think that's a trauma response when it's a neurodivergent? I am sad to be the one to tell you the truth on this, but no, they don't. They think it's the autism, they think it's the ADHD, they think it's the neurodivergent diagnosis, and never wrap their brains around the fact that it could be a response to trauma. Okay? That is why we have situations where I gave you the comparison the other night, right? When a kid who's been through obvious trauma starts manifesting those behaviors because they've gone through trauma, no one is going to say, well, hey, these behaviors weren't happening while they were with the abusive parent. Maybe we should send them back because people are not insane. However, because of that lack of knowledge and understanding and trying to explain it to the few dinosaurs that are left in this field that are holding on with a death grip, they'll look at the program we were previously at that caused our trauma, and because we were able to mask long enough to at least try to minimize the trauma being inflicted upon us, they, for some bizarre reason, think that we should get sent back to the program and put back on the machines and the programs that caused the trauma that was causing those behaviors to become more intense, more frequent, and worse in the first place. Okay? Because we are walking, talking diagnoses first. Even when they have in their records and files the fact that the majority of us have gone through traumatic shit because they have been trained and had drilled in their head, probably since their old medical days, that everything's always about the diagnosis. The fact that we could be having a trauma response to the abuse we had suffered never seems to enter their heads. It never seems to enter their heads that the correct response would be to reach out into the mental health field and get a hold of the experts that are specifically trauma-informed therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists, and adding them into the team so that those behaviors can start being dealt with appropriately. A large issue is it's because a lot of these folks, the way that they are being trained when they go into this field, it literally is the diagnosis is always at fault. And number two, although it has gotten better over the last 3 decades, there needs to start being a hell of a lot better exchange in information between the mental health fields and the fields that deal specifically with developmental disabilities. Okay? Now, granted, in my case, I did kind of have to essentially look that up by last year in high school, I might add, in order so that I essentially did my experts' work for them and did bring that trauma informed expert in. We need to start looking into that. And these fields seriously need to start talking to each other. And just like the state, and I will say that was my advocacy to make sure to have that link there with the more mainstream mental health trauma informed experts for the parents that were going to need those supports. We need them to start talking. Because not every single action, emotion, and everything that we do always have to do with our diagnosis. We're going to go ahead and close out on that, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, you know the drill. Please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. I appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. At least this time, the sign is green, so I'll be with you in a moment with the second video for today. Bye-bye, everyone.